All right. Good evening. My name is Jimmy Cross. This is my final project that I'm going to be presenting to you about my professional development plan for our Office of Admission here at the University of Mount Union. So I want to get started doing a little about me and my institution that I work for. Like I just mentioned, I work for the University of Mount Union. I've always really loved the small school setting. I think it's always been a very special place in my heart. Graduated from a really small high school called Lordstown, right outside of Warren in 2014. Graduated from a small college about 40 minutes north here called Hiram College in 2018 with a degree in communication. And I am planned to graduate in the spring of 2022 with a master's in educational leadership. So my title is Senior Admission Counselor here in the Office of Admission. So essentially what I do on a daily basis is I recruit students from all across Ohio in locations such as Trumbull County in Northeast Ohio, some select Stark County schools. I also recruit in Western Ohio, and basically every state west of Ohio. I also recruit in. So if you can see on the right-hand side of this presentation slide, I have the green territory in state and out of state. So I recruit in a lot of different areas all over the place. I have been in higher education now. This is my fourth year. I've been doing this since 2018. So it's been almost 4 full recruiting cycles. I really value the liberal arts education. I think it is a very fun, setting to work in, especially in higher ed. But admissions really involves a lot of different levels of communication, which makes it really key in recruiting students into your institution because there's a lot of choices throughout the state of Ohio, but also throughout the entire country. Little fun fact, there are over 5,000 colleges and universities from community colleges to branches of bigger schools and liberal arts institutions and all, everything in between. Just wanted to give you a little picture of my team. This is Eric Young, the director of admission. I'll be mentioning him a lot. Caitlin Weiss, an assistant director. Randy Smith, another assistant director. Savannah, Carlos, our admission counselors here. This is Bridget. She's one of our assistant directors. Taylor, who's our transfer admission counselor. And then there's me. So that's our season greeting card from the wintertime. But part one of, I'm going to take a look into our past professional development and give you kind of an idea of the past professional development that we've had here. I've been employed at Mount Union since June of 2020, the beginning of June more specifically. So I'm going to be analyzing our professional development plan for the University of Mount Union through our Office of Admission. I'm going to critique it, give you kind of what I like and what I think can be improved from the previous year of it in the admission office. I've read through the Ohio standards for professional development to produce some strategies and tactics that can improve our current plan. And I found a couple sources also throughout my research just to find kind of what other schools are looking at and also just what people are, giving back for advice, what works, kind of reading off that and brainstorming a little bit through this whole assignment has been really fun. So this is the summer professional development. This took place from June of 2020 until August of 2020. And our annual summer professional development is based on the needs in that year. Admissions, unfortunately, is a very high burnout job. A lot of people come and go. So it all varies based on what the needs are based on the admission counselors that are in the office. So we split up the responsibility for PD. PD as in professional development. We split it up between a couple counselors throughout our office, some assistant directors of admission, our director, one VP of enrollment, one dean, and a couple of professors across campus. So there's a lot of different people that are all contributing towards our professional development, which we do appreciate. And so Eric Young, our director of admission, is the one that spearheaded this professional development over the summertime. So I will provide you each professional development training on individual slides, and then I'll include the takeaways, positives, and potential improvements for future professional development. So the first one is with Ron Holden. He is our assistant dean of students and also the director, of diversity and inclusion. So this professional development was on Black Lives Matter. So we essentially had an open-ended conversation. When we first started off this professional development, we had an agreement where everyone was allowed to be open and honest, and no one was allowed to argue. It was more of a conversation, which was really fun. So it talked about a lot of the current events that have shifted the lives, not only of prospective students, but of our entire country, based on the racial injustice that has happened over time. So we kind of took some time to talk about all these kind of things and how it affects admissions and the importance of having these ongoing conversations and staying up to date on all of the things that have happened, just so we're in the know, and also being able to field questions when it comes to diversity on campus, how our institution is moving forward when it comes to anti-racism, and things that are happening within our society. And so this professional development ended with some sources that students can utilize here on campus. And Ron Holden is the go-to contact person for anything revolving diversity and inclusion. So it all revolves around him, alongside with some of the people that work right under him, which is really exciting. So we're glad to have Ron. Another professional development was with Eric Young, who is our director of admission here at Mount Union. I think this was a really fun one as well. This was on the power of vulnerability. So we watched a TED Talk to kind of preview before we had the conversation, had the meeting. We watched a TED Talk from Breen Brown, which was titled The Power of Vulnerability. So it talks about just being open and being honest, and how to feel more connected with one another. I think vulnerability is a big thing. Being straightforward and being honest is really, I think, it shows a lot to prospective students when you start to have those really important conversations when it comes to getting accepted into school, sending in transcripts, getting, whether your application is on hold because you have a low GPA, whether you get denied into school, how to provide alternate routes so students that love Mount Union but couldn't be accepted can come into Mount Union in a different style, maybe go to community college for a semester, earn 12 credits, and then transfer in after that fall semester and start in the springtime. So I think being vulnerable is a really important thing as well when it comes to our team, because we have really, deep conversations with students on how they got to where they are today and the struggles and all that kind of stuff. And I think being vulnerable and showing students that we're vulnerable really sets the tone for them being vulnerable with us. So I think it's a two-way street right there. So it's always important to be straightforward and honest and vulnerable with prospective students, whether it's good news or not. Professional development with Caitlin Weiss. So these are all been different sessions all throughout this time period, but she is our assistant director of graduate admissions here. This professional development was more specifically on kind of debunking the stereotypes of your institution, basically who we are versus who people think we are. This was also really open. As an admission counselor, I have to know a lot of information about Mount Union. So this was kind of stuff that I already was familiar with to an extent. And so we used like scenarios that involved like all different kinds of things that would help connect students and families and the general public more to Mount Union. So for example, one of the biggest things that people know about Mount Union is how our football team is very good. One of the top Division III institutions in the country. We've won 13 national championships since 1993. We've been there about 17 times for the Stag Bowl, the national championship game. So a lot of people typically around this area only know Mount Union for football. So people stereotype Mount Union as this athlete-only school, which that is not the case, actually. Less than half of our students here on campus are athletes, about 35%. So out of all that, there's 65% of students that aren't student athletes here. And we have very exceptional programs here on campus when it comes to our undergraduate majors that students can choose from. So being able to be very knowledgeable about Mount Union really helps paint the picture when families, you talk to them and they're like, oh, wow, the only thing I know about Mount Union is the football team. And I've heard from so-and-so, this happens at Mount Union, and just debunking those kind of things and providing more knowledge to the general public, to students and families about what we provide as an institution, farther than just being a football school or an athletic based school. So we really just kind of got a refresher on content that we were familiar with, but also some content that we weren't as familiar with. So that was really exciting. So you're probably starting to see a little bit of a trend about communication within professional development for our team. The next professional development we did was with Bridget England, who is an assistant director of admission here. This was another great one about optimizing physical and mental health in the workplace. We did an interactive PD where we utilized Menti, which is a like interactive presentation where you connect to it with your cell phone and you use a code to get into the interactive presentation and just ask questions. They have scales that you can range from 1 to being the worst, to 5 to being the best. Is asking those kind of questions to see how I perform well. I'm not feeling well today. A bunch of different kind of things revolving physical and mental health. And this really emphasized the importance on it. And so we had a really open dialogue on strategies and tactics that we individually have used to benefit our mental health and our physical health. And we all just kind of collaborated and came up with, and discussed what our best practices were when it came to those kind of things. And at the end of it, we actually took a piece of paper, and the title of it, which I have in my office right now, it says, "I take great," in all caps, "great care of my health in this office, but I won't forget to," and then you put 2 things down. I put when I work out when I go home and not nap. I love to nap when I go home. And number 2 was take care of my mental health more. So kind of let me set some goals for myself that are more general. I wanted to start with general goals. And I think those have really kind of jump started my workouts more, but also like taking care of my mental health. So even though those 2 things don't necessarily revolve around what I do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to the Office of Admission and my job, it's just important to be able to take care of yourself outside of work as well. So that's what our professional development there was about. This was with Hannah Reese, another professional development. She's a former admission counselor. She now works at John Carroll University, but her professional development was on recruiting the recruit, how to win over the scholarship athlete. So a big thing when it comes to recruiting student athletes is, competing with other institutions when it comes to scholarships and grants and financial aid. So this was a really big communication-based professional development. We talked on how to recruit the athletes that are heavily recruited, and often looking at Division II and Division I institutions that are offering athletic scholarships. A big misconception I think a lot of student athletes had, and this was a great point in the professional development, is a good amount of student athletes actually think that they're going to be paying less by going to a bigger school. And that's not always the case. Students often think that, oh, I'm going to be on a scholarship, so everything else is taken care of. You may be getting a scholarship, and that's wonderful that you will be getting a scholarship, but at the same time, you may be paying less to go to a smaller institution versus a bigger school, like maybe the University of Akron or Youngstown State University. You may be paying less to go to Mount Union versus a bigger institution. So that's a big misconception that a lot of athletes do have, and a lot of just students in general have. Seeing that price tag when it comes to college can scare a lot of people, but that doesn't always mean that you're going to be paying that cost. It all depends on your scholarship, what your GPA looks like in high school, what your ACT, SAT scores look like. The FAFSA as well is another big factor into affordability as well. We offer $33 million in scholarships and grants every single year. So we really put a big emphasis on affordability. I think when we have those conversations with students, it really helps them change their mind or maybe change their perception of Mount Union. So we really have to sell the academic programs here on campus, campus life, residence halls, athletic programs, and how we try to do all these big things and show the full picture rather than just athletics. Because we at Mount Union, like in the last slide, a big misconception is that people think that Mount Union is only a sport-based school where you come here and you play sports and you don't do anything else. And our academics are, subpar. That's not the case. We actually have very highly ranked academic programs here on campus because of our alumni that give back to campus a lot. We've had $110 million invested into Mount Union in the last 10 years. So a lot of the buildings, a lot of the classrooms, a lot of the labs, facilities, residence halls have been renovated or updated in the last decade. So we really have to sell the institution in a lot of different ways and have a vast knowledge of the institution that we serve. So that was a really big communication-based professional development there as well. That one was really fun too. And last but not least, this is from Adelina Cooper, who is our associate professor in the communication department here at Mount Union. So another faculty member this time talking about LGBTQ plus and allied training here. So working with that base community. This one was different from a lot of different professional development we did over the summertime. And this one really had a different kind of focus. And I really enjoyed this one where we practiced communication and analyzing situations based on verbals and nonverbals, all that kind of stuff. We read some case studies. We were divided into 3 different groups, and there were 3 different case studies. So we did all of our calls in professional development were on Zoom. And the Zoom and Zoom, if you're not as familiar, you can do some breakout rooms. And you can send people to different breakout rooms depending on what their group is. So I was group number 2. And so we had to carefully read and analyze and give our feedback on how to approach a situation. And so all of them revolving around the LGBTQ plus community. And there's like, for example, my situation that we had was one of my new coworkers. This is not like my actual coworkers, but in the case study, a coworker of mine decided that they want to be identified with their pronouns as they and them. So we had to adjust to that. And in one situation, the coworker that wants had their pronouns changed, we had a situation in the office where someone used the wrong pronouns, which are the former pronouns before the new ones of they and them. And that coworker freaked out and was very upset and exited the office and went home. And so it escalated over time. There was back and forth conversation where it just wasn't going well. So we had to analyze how we could have stepped in on that conversation and kind of handle that kind of situation. So I think it's a really important thing as the LGBTQ plus community has become more and more prevalent within our society, which is great. We have to be up to date on that knowledge as well. So talking about all different kinds of opportunities on campus for students to feel included here at Mount Union. And I think Mount Union does a really great job with diversity and inclusion for a lot of different kinds of things. So I think that's a really great example. And my office is actually an allied training safe spot. So for anybody that may want to know that, there you go. So this is the last one. We have weekly one-on-ones with Eric Young, who's our director here. This takes place all throughout the year, more so not as much as professional development, more so on talking about what we're seeing, what our focuses are for the week and more. Eric, I really like Eric as my boss because he asks kind of what our goals and aspirations are, whether it regards admissions or not. Like admissions is not my end game. However, I do really like what I do on a daily basis. So, once he sees what you want to do for a career, or if you have an idea of what you want to do, if it's outside of admissions, he will then try to get you experience within that field and kind of tie it into admissions. So it's like professional development in a sense over the course of your whole time within your office. So any opportunity to boost your resume with something that you want to do, he's definitely going to do that because I want to work in student affairs. That's my end game, I believe, in higher education. So he lets me work alongside their office a lot. So I really like doing that a lot. So that's part one. That's all of the professional development that we did last summer. So part two, I'm going to analyze everything and kind of give you my biggest takeaways. So I think overall, there's a big emphasis on the development of communication skills within our office. I think it's really important to have a vast knowledge of your institution, as students always have a wide range of questions. So it's just good to be knowledgeable in a lot of different parts. You don't have to know every single detail all the time, but the follow up is nice if you is really important as well when you do that. And you're not as familiar with something in your at your institution. The importance of vulnerability and being honest and straightforward with somebody, I think, is really important in your professional development. Being able to take care of your mental health, I think, is a key proponent in doing great work in your office. And then preparing everybody for meaningful careers, even if admissions is not the end goal. The power of listening. I think the power of listening is very, very important in our role, to really develop your relationships with your students that you work with on a daily basis. So we have to always find new ways on how to listen and understand better, because every recruiting class every single year is different for admissions. So it's important to be able to be up to date on a lot of the current events going on within 17, 18-year-old young adults. And we always have to find better ways to listen and communicate more effectively. And I think it also is depending on current events that are happening within our society. So staying up with current events just in society as general is always great. Here's some of my biggest takeaways from HCLE. I think communications, I've already kind of hit on that, is a really big one. And how to develop communication plans that involve goals and strategies and tactics for our professional development is really important. Continuous improvement, collecting feedback from internal, from our office, but also external from other offices, to determine how they define value and what's valuable to our office for professional development. We're always trying to improve here. We're not stagnant at all within our team, which is really great. So we're always trying to evaluate and do better and do more. And also workforce planning, looking for short-term and long-term goals within and for future staffing needs. So we're always trying to see how we can improve professional development, how we can do better, what we can change, what we can do more of. Um, Conducting job analysis to capture knowledge, skills, and abilities required for identified positions. Everybody has different needs and wants and different responsibilities within our office. So being able to capture more knowledge and skills and learn from each other, I think, is really important. So the professional development is nice because we have a little bit of, we have, staff members outside our office. We have professors. We have people within our office that have different backgrounds and knowledge of different things. So we kind of, like the term iron sharpens iron, how we all kind of improve each other and build each other up, I think, is really cool within our office. So we have a lot of different things there. But number 2 on HCLE is communications. Number 4, I think, is another great one for continuous improvement. Number 5, which is workforce planning. There's a bunch more here that I think really kind of tailor to, our professional development in our office. Human resource branding. We're always trying to develop key messages and improve those key messages that are consistent with our institution. Building employees' capacity to serve as ambassadors of the organization is big. Expanding our knowledge is always beneficial, and taking as much information as possible for our team to learn and develop is important. Training and development is another great one. Number 10, how we assess organizational employee training and professional development needs. Every year is different. Like I said, admissions is a job where people are either in it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or they're in it forever. So we have a lot of different needs for the team. You're going to have new admission counselors that come on every single year. Out of my whole team that we have right now, there's about half of them are still working here. So it just varies year to year on what the needs are for the team. So being able to analyze that every single year, I think, is really important. So I'm happy that I'm able to analyze it for my final project. Number 12, career ladders and succession planning. So creating roles for high potential employees that empower them to take on additional responsibilities, grow professionally, and remain engaged in the organization. Number 16, organizational culture. I think culture is very important in your office. If you have bad culture, you're not going to have good morale. And so developing your culture, becoming a family, is a really big key into success within your institution. So those are all the HCLEs that I think were the biggest takeaways, and how they connected in a lot of different ways within our office, I think is really important. And I'm glad that I found a lot of different HCLEs that really connected to the professional development that we do here within our office. So part 3, I'm going to do a little critiquing on what I liked, what I didn't like. So I believe I started with, yes, with what I liked. The development of communication skills with my territory and where I recruit on a daily basis is all over the country. So I have different families from different places that have different styles of communication and different needs, and being able to communicate back and forth is really important. Phone calls, text messages, emails, keeping up to date with these students is going to be important in the relationship building part. The higher that you, the better of a relationship that you build with your student and with your students in your territory, the higher chance that you have for them to enroll into your institution. So developing those relationships can be very beneficial when it comes to the Office of Admission, because what we do is very important. Have the importance of having the vast knowledge of your institution is, I think, really important too. And I liked our professional development there because we do have a lot of different things that we did go over. Even though a lot of the professional development came within our office and from my coworkers and colleagues, I still took away a lot of information during that time. Not always revolving malunion, but also just revolving around like my physical health, my mental health, how to handle situations when it comes to like the LGBTQ plus community and Black Lives Matter, that with everything going on between the last year with that, being able to handle those situations in my job, but also outside of my job, and how to become a better person. I felt that I really growed over the course of the last year based on that professional development that I did have. I feel like I expanded my knowledge a lot in a lot of different ways, not just branching out in one direction, but multiple directions. So that's really great. And preparing the office for meaningful careers, even if admissions isn't the end goal, I really respect our team and Eric, because he really values that, hey, you may not want to do this for a long time, but what do you want to do? What are your goals? What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? What are your in between, all that kind of stuff. He really goes that extra mile to ensure that we get that experience in the field that we do have. Like I said, I want to go into student affairs, so that definitely is something that he wants to get me more experience in. I think having everything split up between different colleagues is really great. And one of my sources that I use is called the Checklist Manifesto. And this book is really great. I recommend it for anybody. And this really attests to like splitting up tasks in order to hit everyone's specialties. Everybody has a special, everyone's got something that makes them special. And a lot of my colleagues in my office have a lot of different things that make them great. But in this book, Gawande really mentions the following. To handle the complexity, we split up the task among various specialties or people that are in different parts. So he works in a hospital branch, and there was a lot of different things that were happening that day. So everybody collaborated, everyone had different specialties based on what they went to school for and what their job and role is within the hospital. So there were a lot of different things that were happening. And so what I really liked was that our team took different parts, everyone had different specialties, and their professional development training was based on their specialty. So that was really cool. But I think that really connects to some of the things that I liked, and Gawande really hit the nail on the head. So the Ohio Standard for Professional Development, connections through our own professional development, the 7 standards, learning communities. We can have more professional development through through Mount Union faculty and staff. That would help reduce costs, so we're not having to do external sources outside of the institution. So we can always have continuous improvement. That's cost efficient. Standard 2 is leadership. Using leaders across campus in our professional development provides our team with someone to connect with in regards to our PD, and also just to have conversations with, just to grow with, have a mentor, have somebody that's always going to be there to talk to, resources. We could always utilize those resources too, in our professional development where we see gaps, maybe where our team is missing somewhere. So we always will have gaps. That's just a given for any team. So being able to utilize those professional development plans with different resources across campus will be nice. We can definitely, assess our data a little better. It seems like we don't utilize data as much in terms of professional development, so this can be in an area where we improve. Standard 5, which is learning designs, integrating new styles and approaches in communication with prospective students. We stay up with trends with young adults to see what has changed and what we might have to change in regards to like our admission policies. For example, like last year, the coronavirus wasn't happening and students were able to take the ACT and SAT. This year, students aren't as able to because the ACT and SAT unfortunately have been canceled a lot and postponed. So we've gone test optional this year for admission into Mount Union. So we try to be flexible and get ahead of that curve when it comes to changes. Implementation, we will apply this new research and feedback within our professional development to address important changes within the office of admission and higher education itself. And then with outcomes, just analyze our progress to see where we improved and where we still have to improve. I think, with the professional development Ohio standards, it was really nice to be able to go on that website and read in and just see where we're good at, where we're not good at, and how we can improve there. What can be reinvented and introduced? Number 1, I think is a great one. Workshops. According to Melissa Nicholas, who is an associate professor of English, at Washington State University, she mentions the importance of how we can conduct professional development. You can utilize an outside source if the budget allows it, or use more offices across campus that work in the fields that would benefit your colleagues within your office. I think that's very important. You can use outside sources. It depends on what your budget looks like year to year. I think we have a lot of people across different institutions that we have connected with. To give you an idea of what I do on a daily basis when it comes to a non-COVID year, I would be going to high school visits. I would be going to college fairs. And at these college fairs, there's a lot of different institutions across the state of Ohio in the tri-state area that we can connect with and ask just kind of how their professional development looks like and, where their gaps are and how they're tackling that to improve their office as a whole. So that's a great thing also to look at is to, talk to other colleagues at other institutions that, see how what they're using in their professional development, what they're targeting. The checklist manifesto, Atuguande reaches out to like the World Health Organizations, WHO, to see if they've had a successful global health public program. It was funny. I was reading this book, and I think the WHO, the representative that he was reaching out to, just kind of laughed at him. Was like, "What? Like, you're asking the World Health Organization if we've had a successful global health public program?" And at that time, they didn't. And I think it's funny, but it also brings up an important point. And never hurts to ask another colleague, hey, what are you doing that works? I think higher education, a lot of us colleges and universities really just want to collaborate because we're here for the sole purpose of educating the next generation of young learners. So however we can do that, we'll definitely do that. And so asking other colleagues is a great example and a good opportunity. I think we can set more clear expectations for professional learning. We all have different needs, but I think we can all come together to set these expectations so we can have an even more effective PD plan. Another slide on what can be reinvented and introduced, using outside sources. For example, the Ohio Association for College Admission Counselors, OACAC or OACAC is what we call it. They hold a conference every year to grow the minds of young counselors. I got to go to one. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of great networking opportunities. And there's also a lot of committees that will be there that you can join and also grow your knowledge when it comes to professional development and boosting your resume. So that's a great source. I think we could definitely do a little bit more of. Talk to other colleagues through other institutions. I had already mentioned that. Create a plan that involves mentoring programs across our admission team, like within our office itself. So internal. So for example, I was thinking of Valerie Hill Jackson, who is a professor, and she is a wonderful person. I got to read her book, and it is very interesting on how she talks about in her book the importance of like reflection and development in the field of education, and utilizing your colleagues within your office and just asking them questions on like, hey, how have you done this? How are you approaching this? Here's the problems that I'm having. Have you had these before? How have you overcome that if you've had these issues? So we all can build each other up. I think that's a big one. And I think using a mentoring program like that, having a buddy that's going to be there and support you and give you feedback and advice can just only build you up even more. I think it's a great opportunity for sure. So creating a plan that involves mentoring young counselors or younger, less experienced counselors can be beneficial, and I would love to do that. So I got to talk a little bit with my colleagues that were around for last summer's professional development, and these were a couple of the big takeaways that they had. I got to talk to each counselor, and they wanted to have more included throughout the year. And I think Eric also was on that same page too. He would love to do that, and I think we're trying to find more efficient ways when it comes to cost to do that. So more internal within our institution that we're probably going to aim to do that. A lot of them said they had a lot of great takeaways in the short time that they had. A lot of the professional development was very heavy, but it was very informative and very knowledgeable. And I think including more extreme situations like the allied training, LGBTQ plus training that we had, that really test our character and get us uncomfortable within our team. And when I mean uncomfortable, I'm more in the sense of feeling uncomfortable having these conversations. And I think when you have those uncomfortable conversations within that topic, but also like the Black Lives Matter topic, you grow and grow not only individually, but as a unit, being able to handle these conversations, which will build your confidence in having these conversations with students while you're here on campus. Because we get those questions a lot about what's your diversity look like on campus? What is the percentage of students that are white versus the percentage of students that are not white? And how are you trying to improve that? What's your LGBTQ plus community look like? Are they seen as included on your campus? We get a lot of those very deep, important questions, which is very valid to have in your college search. You want to have a school that you want to feel very welcomed at. I think that's key. So including more extreme situations where we get those questions or we have those scenarios where something happens and we have to respond, and within a certain amount of time in a certain way will really develop us a little bit more there, and then help navigate conversations more efficiently. I think the professional development from last summer definitely did that, just from having those kind of training sessions that made us more knowledgeable on a lot of different facets of campus. And that's my references. But to wrap it all up, I just appreciate everybody taking the time to watch my video. I hope this was informative, but I think overall our professional development is really solid. I think we do a lot of great things within our team, within our office. And I personally have grown a lot over the last year. I feel like I've learned a lot. I've experienced a lot. I've met with a lot of people. I've had a lot of different kind of conversations that revolve around those topics. And there's definitely improvement. There's always going to be improvement no matter what. But Overall, really solid professional development plan. I think we only can grow up from here. So thank you again, everybody, for taking the time. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Thank you.